Good morning and welcome back to Good Morning KU. I'm Shamaria Massenberg.
And I'm Kennedy Kavinsky.
Now, today there's only one clear topic, one that has Americans anxious and awaiting results, and that's the 2020 presidential election. Kennedy, you and I are first-time voters. Could you describe what this experience has been like for you and just watching everything unfold?
You know, this already being an election that's different than any other election our country has ever seen, it was already a stressful process for every voter, and let alone for first-time voters like ourselves. With COVID-19 in the way, there's been so many different processes of absentee ballots, mail-ins, and this has also caused lots of issues throughout the actual election process as well. How was it for you?
Honestly, it's stressful, I must say, and especially as a first-time voter, being that I also had to vote through an absentee ballot, being stressed out, wondering if my vote was going to get rejected or even make it, because millions of voters everywhere are outraged at either lost ballots by USPS or just their ballots being rejected altogether, and I'm thankful that it didn't happen to me.
Yeah, so with the election, as we all went to bed on Tuesday night, it looked as if Donald Trump did hold a steady lead over Biden. But as the night wore on and into Wednesday morning, it looked as if Trump's odds of being reelected were shrinking by the minute as the Biden-Harris campaign started stealing the likings of the Electoral College and also some major key states. But we have seen Trump kind of scrambling for his votes as he and his team kind of did a legal blitz while trying to halt voting in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and he's also trying to change the handling of ballots in Georgia. What do you think this is? Why do you think he's doing this right now?
Honestly, I found a little bit of humor in it, honestly, because I think Trump is kind of, getting nervous. And even there was a video of the governor of Michigan kind of making jokes about it because Trump is clearly getting nervous, and I think the election race is really getting tight at this point, and no one really knows where it's going to go. And Trump and his re-election campaign kind of just want meaningful access and to actually view the votes being counted.
Yeah, and while Donald Trump is trying to stretch out this election, the Biden-Harris campaign is putting their trust in the democratic voting process. They say that they came out and claimed they're prepared for any legal action that the Trump re-election team was going to put forth onto them during this week, and they've taken it with grace. I guess we're just going to see how this all plays out. There are states still up in the air for this election. It's not called yet, and there is lots of different scenarios that we see this playing out in.
I think we're all just anxious to see the results, and it could really happen at any moment now. Let's also touch on concerns about voter suppression. So many voters have been getting their ballots rejected throughout this election, and Biden had tweeted a couple of things saying to count every vote and for all these states like Nevada to take their time, because I think we can all really see Biden's confidence as we progress because he does continue to lead Trump.
He does. And if you saw earlier, Donald Trump actually tweeted out this morning, "Stop the vote, stop the count." What? I don't understand. This is a democratic society, and people want their voices heard. We the people want to know that our vote is going to count towards this election. And for there to be information out there saying that there's a possibility not everyone's vote is going to be counted, that is insane to me. I don't know how that is even happening right now.
Trump stated, to stop counting the votes, and if we stop counting, he would win. And a lot of people compared that to him stating that if people stop getting tested, then COVID-19 wouldn't be a thing. And I think his statements just really don't make sense to people right now. He's also made statement early on. He stated that he had already won the election as he was leading Biden, and I wasn't quite too surprised at his comments. How did you feel about that?
Like you said, on Tuesday night at his White House election night speech, he did claim that he had already won the re-election and claimed that he had won major key states that were still up in the air at the time. So to be the president of the United States trying to push for a re-election, I just don't understand why he would give false information to the people of the United States. I say if I was a president, I would make sure to keep my facts honest and truthful, and we're just not seeing that here. And this is very concerning to the people.
It's not his first time making some questionable statements, and in my opinion, I think it's a bit, overzealous of him, and his comments were premature, being that Biden is now leading, and it could very well go in his favor.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Later today, we'll get into a little bit about how COVID-19 is still a big force in our country. It's still present. We can't ignore it just because it's overshadowing by the election. So we'll see a little interview later to see how KU is handling that as well. But I think we are going to go ahead and take a little break right now. So thank you, Shamaria, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Kennedy.
Electoral votes to President Donald Trump's 214, with ballots still being counted in several swing states and both candidates patiently waiting the results. However, the deciding vote could come down to Nevada, which, if won, could give Biden the remaining 6 votes needed to the race.
Despite the official winner of the presidential race having yet to be announced, the Trump campaign has filed lawsuits in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Georgia demanding a halt to votes counted after the November 3rd election day. In Wisconsin, where Biden took the lead with 49% of votes to Trump's 48, the Trump campaign is demanding a recount.
In Detroit, Michigan, tensions were rising when a group of protesters attempted to stop the voting. On Wednesday afternoon, the group was inside TCF Center chanting "Stop the Vote" while banging on glass windows. Due to COVID-19, there was a capacity of how many people were allowed in. In the state of Michigan, registered voters are allowed to observe the ballot counting with approval. A poll challenger was removed from the site by police. It has been projected that the former vice president will win the state of Michigan.
As of right now, President Trump has 49.3% of the voters and Joe Biden has 48.3% of the voters. This race has been pretty tight, but the country is looking towards Nevada for a final decision. We are hoping for a final count of the votes in the next hour. Nevada is the one state that both nominees are waiting for in order to find out who wins or not. In 2016, both Michigan and Wisconsin were considered red states, but in recent news, they have been considered swing states and have turned out blue. In the last election, President Trump won the vote with both of the previously red states when he was battling it out with other nominee Hillary Clinton. It appears that both states have had a majority of votes that are pro-Biden, which is a shocking turn in this election.
And now we'll throw it over to Blake for sports.
But the Niners are a considerably different team this year, with both the offense and defense being riddled by injury. The Packers will look to rebound from a loss to Minnesota last week. In KU sports, countless KU men's basketball players were named to National Award watch lists this week. Ochai Agbaji was named to the Jerry West Shooting Guard of the Year award watch list. Marcus Garrett is on the Bob Cousy Point Guard of the Year award watch list, and he was also named a unanimous preseason All-Big 12 player. The KU women's soccer team takes on Iowa State tonight at Rock Chalk Park at 7 o'clock. The Jayhawks are coming off of a 2-1 loss to number 6 ranked West Virginia last week. KU fell to 4-3 on the season after a loss, while Iowa State is 2-6. The Jayhawk football team will travel to Norman on Saturday to take on the 19th ranked Oklahoma Sooners. Jayhawks look to build on a promising performance last week that was led by sophomore Kenny Logan Jr. He had an interception and returned a kickoff back for a touchdown against Iowa State. The team showed signs of life but eventually fell 52-22. Coach Les Miles says that despite the outcome, progress is being made.
We still have improvement to take. We have to make improvement. We have to put the pieces of the team together. And right now, I think we have a view of our team in bits and pieces that you guys can see.
I knew from the time we came back from quarantine that Coach Miles and the rest of the staff put a great class together, and I knew that that they were going to be able to contribute. Most of our freshman guys are from powerhouse high schools, so that pretty much is what we expected from them. So I was very excited to see them go out there and play, and I'm very excited for Luke Grimm to make some big plays.
That was senior wide receiver Andrew Parchment talking about freshman Luke Grimm, who had 4 catches for 53 yards. OU and QB Spencer Rattler handily beat Texas Tech last week and look to do the same at home this weekend. Kickoff on Saturday is at 2:30 p.m. on ESPN.
Welcome back. I'm Anna Ambrose with today's special guest, Azja Butler. Azja, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking and thanks for having me.
Of course. Now you're the president of the Jayhawker Liberation Front here on campus. Can you explain to our viewers what exactly that is and how it all started?
No, yeah, of course. So a year or two ago, there was a group on campus called Jayhawkers or Jayhawks for Bernie, a voting group dedicated to like the election of Bernie Sanders, etc. Obviously, with the way that the election played out, and we're still waiting to find out, right? Bernie did not end up being an option for a lot of those students, so there was a transition that needed to happen. And the group ended up deciding that we are in a pivotal moment in history, which calls for direct action and mutual aid. And after much deliberation and consideration, people decided to transition that group into the Jayhawker Liberation Front. We will work for like the liberation of people through dismantling of capitalism, white supremacy, and the patriarchy, primarily on KU's campus, because that's what we have control over. The group generally has about 5 pillars to focus on in terms of just like working with and for students. The first would be the socialism, feminism, ethics of care, abolitionists, and internationalists, all which we hope to be an inclusive group. And it's open to anyone and everyone. And we primarily, are just worried about student safety and taking care of students here on.
That's great. Thank you. Back in September, you all started a petition and hosted a die-in protest in front of Strong Hall, calling on KU to close its campus amid COVID concerns. How did that play out, and what type of response did you get from students and faculty?
Yeah, it was a lot of work, for sure. There was a lot that went into it and a lot of planning. I would say it was pretty successful. We got a lot of local and international coverage in terms of just like people were interested and pretty concerned with like a bunch of students not being happy about campus, because I think for a while KU and a lot of other universities were pushing a narrative that students wanted to come back, that we all really wanted to be here. And I think that sometimes that is the case with a lot of younger KU like students, like primarily freshmen and people who really wanted to like get out of the house and like come to college and have their college experience. But I think a lot of us older students, especially like students that like have made their homes like homes here, on top of like students who just like don't or do understand, right, like the importance of like staying COVID safe and like understanding social distancing, we're really scared and not really amused with like the whole coming back to campus thing, given the amount of like cases that have risen in Kansas and Lawrence primarily in the past couple of months. And so with that in mind, we definitely were kind of challenging that narrative that I think a lot of universities were pushing, that we all wanted to come back here. And with that, right, I think that generally the provost and the chancellor made it very clear in a lot of their emails that they sent out to KU students, like massively, that we all get through our emails, that they were just like uninterested with closing campus. But we got a lot of support from GTAC, which is our grad student union. They did a lot of work with us and were really supportive. And there was a lot of like university like groups or schools, like the School of like American Studies, etc. They were all really supportive as well. But yeah, we ended up not necessarily like not following through, but it's just like after the protest happened, it's just like the university made it clear that they just like were not going to work with us in terms of closing campus. So eventually we had to make efforts to move and pivot towards more concerns and making sure that if students were going to be forced to stay here, go to class on campus, and weren't going to be aided in that way, that they were going to be aided in other ways, i.e., getting funding, stimulus things from the university, and other aid that the university can provide in terms of like mental health in a time like this.
Right. Now, Asia, given we're just a few weeks away from the end of the fall semester and in-person classes are still expected to resume in February, will there be any more protests or further action from the Jayhawk Liberation Front? And is there anything else you'd like to say to our viewers?
No, yeah, that's a really great question. Given the amount of like attention that we've gotten from like other media outlets as well as like the university itself, it's really hard to like say or put a finger on when and where we'll be protesting and how, just for the safety of our members and myself included. But I would like to say that like, yeah, I don't think there'll be any more protests like COVID related, just because like I said, the university has made it very clear that their priority is not the safety of students in terms of just like keeping campus open or closed. And that's not to say that like our professors or our GTAs or whatever aren't concerned with our safety, but a lot of the administration and Strong are more concerned with just like making sure that like we make being here as COVID safe as possible, even though that's kind of like a direct contradiction to like what COVID requires. And that's been made clear from our group from the very beginning. I will say though, however, that we have a lot of other things. Like I said, there are 5 pillars that consist of the JLF and like what we do in terms of like keeping students safe and keeping students educated about what their rights are on campus. We've been working a lot in tandem with Abolition KU, and have a lot of other things planned in terms of just like, what does it mean to like, have a police-free campus, right? Like, what do those things look like? So we have a lot of other projects in the work that are affected by COVID, but aren't directly related in the same way. So to say that those protests would be for that reason, I think would be incorrect. But as we move forward from that and we develop other goals, I think that our main focus in terms of COVID things are to really just communicate with the university and to recognize if you're going to keep us all here, you need to make it accessible as possible, i.e., not making in-person classes required, making online class accessible, giving students the stimulus that they need in order to afford being here, especially when they can't work or like the jobs here in Lawrence aren't as much as they have been. Like, the underground shut down. It wasn't making enough money. A lot of students work there, right? So given all of these things, right, on top of the other social contexts that are influencing the way that our university works, i.e. all of the like Black Lives Matter protests that are still going on in the summer that some people don't like to recognize, right? An election that isn't fully called yet, right? Like these are things that we have to support our students and peers like under these circumstances. And so given all of that, the JLF is here to sort of support the students and whoever needs them in a time when the university doesn't fully understand their responsibility.
That's great. Asia, thank you so much for being here with us today and all that great information about JLF.
Yeah, of course, no problem. Thank you for having me. And we're only a DM away. So any more questions?
Thank you. I think that's it. Thank you so much. That will be the end of our show today. Make sure to stay tuned for Playmakers tomorrow and Gmku next Thursday.